Welcome to Films and Stuff with your hosts, Pete Mitchell and Ethan Hunt.
Welcome back to Films and Stuff. I am your host, Ethan. I'm here with your co-host, but the lead host, Pete. Pete, what's up today?
Not much. How are you?
What is our mission today, should we choose to accept it?
Oh, we're accepting it.
We are accepting. What are we accepting?
We are accepting that we are about to be watching in cinemas Mission Impossible 7, because it's called
Part
Dead
1.
Man's Reckoning Part 1. But that's too long of a title, I'll be honest. So I'm just calling it Mission Impossible 7. And
MI7.
in advance of that, I thought it would be a good idea for you and I to go through the first 6 Mission Impossible movies, just so that we can kind of get our heads around where your namesake is.
Where is Ethan Hunt? What is the last time that you've kind of like gone through all 6 and just like refreshed yourself in terms of what year they came out? What was the plot? What was like the feature stunt? I had a lot of this stuff a little bit jumbled in my head until I went through and I kind of sorted it. Especially the last 3, for me, were all kind of jumbled up, and I needed to go through and kind of like map it out a little bit more clear.
Yeah. So it's interesting you say that. I think the ones that I can differentiate the most cleanly in my heads without referring to Wikipedia or to IMDb.
Yeah.
The very first one.
Yep.
The sequel to that.
Yep. John Woo.
And like 50% of the third one. But then it starts all melding together. When we're talking about Rogue Nation and Fallout especially, I start getting a little bit, not confused necessarily, but I start confusing the plot points or the elements. And I think that's because it's really from Rogue Nation onwards that we learn about this secret cabal that persists over the last few movies.
Yeah.
And that has not been, I think it's been a great plot element. Don't get me wrong. Yeah. It's very much like the current James Bond franchise.
Oh, I was going to say the same thing. You're so right. I was getting that confused.
And that's exactly the same thing that happened was that between Casino Royale, Quantum of Solace, Skyfall, blah, 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 all of them, again, all relatively excellent movies, but in terms of trying to differentiate between them, it became harder and harder because they started intertwining plot elements from previous movies.
Yeah.
And when I think of a Mission Impossible, I mean, I grew up watching the original series, right? The original series and the sequel series, the pseudo reboot in, the late 80s. Those TV series were like classic TV series of that era. There was no overarching plot or storyline. Each episode was a standalone episode, right? It was like the A-Team. You didn't need to watch episode 12 to understand what's happening in episode 13.
My, how the times have changed.
Absolutely.
Now you've got to download an episode of Films and Stuff, not just episode 25, but now this new episode 2 years later. You've got to listen to us banter about who is who and what is the distinction between Ghost Protocol, Rogue Nation, and Fallout, which I'm with you. I was really combining a little bit.
You raised the fact that we talked about this maybe not as specifically, but we talked about this a couple of years ago. That should tell you how far delayed this movie has been. So this movie was supposed to come out the same summer we were talking about it a year and a half ago. Yeah. But then, of course, the COVID pandemic obviously affected things. Tom Cruise is one of the most disciplined actors and maybe even human beings we've ever seen on the planet. He stuck to his guns and said that I refuse to release this movie on anything other than theater, which he did to Top Gun. Everyone thought that he was crazy. He said, trust me, it'll pay off. And of course, it paid off, right? It was by and far one of, if not the success story of the summer of 2022.
Yeah.
I have a sneaking suspicion this is going to be the success story of 2023 as well, because you've
Boom.
put Mission
I
Impossible
have.
7 as your
I
number
have.
one movie of the
I
summer.
have.
I've put it as my fourth. In any case, let's get on with it. Shall we start with the first film?
So, to put this in perspective, the first Mission Impossible came out in 1996. That's 27 years ago.
Yeah.
Tom Cruise and Ving Rhames, by the way,
Yeah.
who's been there for the whole thing, have been doing this for 27 years. That's just shocking to me. And if you look at the original trailer, I mean, Tom Cruise is just like so baby-faced and young. It was really something.
If I recall correctly, and I think this is probably a good idea because you have gone through these a little bit more recently.
Indeed.
I haven't. I'll be the layperson and you can
Yeah.
be the authority.
That's
But
right.
correct me if I'm wrong. Tom Cruise is implicated for the death of his entire team
That's
during a
right.
mission that's gone awry.
That's right. There's a mission in Prague, and there is some type of double cross, and his entire team is wiped out, and he is obviously implicated or believed to have been the traitor. And he spends the rest of the movie on the run trying to clear his name by finding out who the actual traitor was.
And his team leader was the first one to die, or was one
John
of
Voight.
the first ones to
Yep.
die, Jim Phelps, who we will all have remembered from the original TV series.
That's right.
Now, in order to find the person who's kind of either the mole or the double crossing guy on this mission, they're trying to steal some kind of list of identities. And so the way he can find out the identity of the person who's double crossed him is that he needs to steal that same list from the CIA first and use that as bait. Is that correct?
Right.
And that is what led to what we should call let's say the flagship stunt of this movie.
Maybe of this franchise. I
Most
have to
likely.
say, yeah, I mean, 27 years later, you're talking about where he's suspended by the wire.
Yeah.
In the white room, wearing the all black. He's got the glasses, right, that help him do something. I think it was like temperature controlled and sound controlled. And he's doing kind of like all the flips. And at one point, he's like spread eagled.
Wasn't there like he had to catch a bead of sweat that fell off his glass or something?
Yeah.
And all the while Jean Reno is trying to struggle with a rat inside this pristine ventilation chamber.
Yeah.
I remember that. Yeah.
That image, I think, is still iconic for this franchise. At 27 years later, I think there's some things that rival it, but I don't think that one can ever be forgotten, right? That's fantastic.
And it's also probably one of the sequences that's been most parodied in other series, in other comedies, in other cartoons.
Yeah. That and kind of like the Indiana Jones rolling boulder.
Oh, absolutely. And sliding under the closing door and grabbing the hat just in time.
Yes. Like those are two things that you build like a theme park around, right?
Oh,
like those are so iconic that like they're money makers by themselves as those set pieces.
Yeah. By the end of the movie, we learn, and I mean, it goes without saying, but I mean, there's got to be a statute of limitations for this. Spoiler alert.
Yeah.
If I recall correctly, we learned that Jim Phelps wasn't actually dead.
Correct.
That he was the traitor.
He was the mole.
And it ends with that crazy chase sequence where Jean Reno is piloting a helicopter inside the tunnel.
That's
and
right.
He's atop the high-speed TGV train. The rotor blade kind of almost nicks him in the throat, and that's how the movie practically ends, right?
Yeah. Very solid end to, Mission Impossible film, but I agree. Yes, the helicopter explodes and he's kind of like pushed onto the train. And like you said, like the rotor comes within like inches of nicking his jugular.
Yeah.
And that film did very well, by the way, on a budget of 80 million, made 457 million, which if you're doing the math is basically 571%. It made almost 6 times its budget. I guess that's the standard that everyone else has failed to live up to. That first one was by margin a huge moneymaker.
Yeah, I think it's also because a relatively, I mean, we say reasonable now because $80 million today for a movie is nothing, but you have to put in context, $80 million in 1996 was a lot of money. Likewise, $450 million is a ton of money. Even by today's standards, it's a lot of money.
Rightfully so.
So I think a lot of that was also probably driven not by Tom Cruise and the stunts, but was probably driven by the nostalgia of finally seeing a Mission Impossible movie on the big screen.
Yes.
And I don't want to call it the first, but it's got to be, at least of the modern era, one of the first reboots in a cinematic basis for a TV series, right?
Yeah.
I think that also led the charge for like Charlie's Angels, Josie and the Pussycats, and like there were a bunch of these TV shows from the 60s, 70s, and 80s that all of a sudden became ripe for adaptation into movies.
Absolutely right. That is Mission Impossible. There was no colon, no other grammar, no punctuation. It was just Mission Impossible. Then we had what's commonly referred to as MI2, right? Mission Impossible 2.
The John Woo one.
This was the year 2000, so 4 years later. Directed by John Woo, included Thandoi Newton, right, who still had a great career. Brendan Gleeson, always solid. Dominic Purcell, always solid. The plot line was some type of virus was created in a laboratory. Sound familiar? And the bad guy was going to create a global pandemic. Sound familiar? Sell the antidote to the highest bidder, which sounds like not a very climatic ending, but that was it. And this film I remember very well, and I thought that it was characterized very, very much by the John Woo kind of Michael Bay-esque action sequences, right?
Yeah.
It had a different look and feel from the first one. The first one, even though it hasn't aged well because it had email, and not just email, AOL email. And if anyone knows what that is, please drop us a DM. But I mean, this one was much more of an action film and moved away a little bit from the masks and the Mission Impossible like technology style, right?
Yeah, the difference between MI1 and MI2 was akin to the difference between Alien and Aliens. So Alien was much more suspenseful and almost horror, whereas Aliens, the sequel, was much more action-packed. I feel like that's exactly the same here. Yeah. I remember I used to make fun of this movie because the first movie was quite intelligent and cerebral.
Yeah.
Right? It was mysterious. You didn't know who the guy was. It was a genuine shock when you see Jim Phelps being revealed as the bad guy at the end. Yeah. Whereas in this movie, I don't want to say they dumbed it down, but they dumbed it down, right? So the one standout sequence to me that was emblematic of how they kind of made this movie a bit easier to watch was that scene at the racetrack where Thandoi Newton pickpockets some kind of disk drive from the bad guy.
Yeah.
And Ethan Hunt is telling her what to do. And he's like, yes, the disc is in his left jacket pocket. And they re-emphasized that 30 times. Yeah. And then the bad guy was like, yes, you can find my disc. It's in my right jacket pocket. And everyone in the cinema was like, gasp.
Yeah.
He knows? And I was just like, well, obviously he knows. I mean, you've set up for the last 10 minutes that it was in the left. And you made it so crystal clear. I felt like this was probably not what John Woo is famous for, right? John Woo is famous for Face Off. He's famous for these awesome, hard-boiled detective action fight sequences from, Hong Kong cinema.
Right.
He's not necessarily known for his most nuanced takes on a spy thriller.
Yeah.
So when I think of this sequence, when I think of the John Woo of it all, was that sequence where you see the doves flying out of the bunker.
Oh, I totally remember that. Yes.
Right? And then the fight sequence with literally two motorcycles that are dueling.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
and then they land up somehow on a beach, even though they're nowhere near the coast.
Yeah. I think the motorcycles and the fight sequences are very, very John Woo. And I think that it was an interesting choice to have as a director.
Exactly.
I'm so happy they've removed him after this one because that's not the Mission Impossible style. That is a Transformers style. He should be the director of Transformers, not of Mission Impossible
I
series.
totally agree. I think that's not to say that Mission Impossible doesn't have action, as we'll talk about. Like every movie has a signature stunt.
Yeah.
This one, probably the weakest of the signature stunts.
Yeah.
You see him slide off a building. You see him jump off a building, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Oh, actually, probably the signature stunt of this was the opening sequence, is when he's wearing his cool ass Ray-Bans and free climbing up the cliffside. And then a rocket drops down with the glasses, and he puts on the glasses, and it shows him the next mission.
Yeah.
And then he throws the glasses, and it explodes in midair and leads to Limp Bizkit's opening sequence.
Yeah.
So memorable, certainly, right? If I can remember this after with such granularity after so long, certainly memorable, but not Mission Impossible.
I agree. But MI2 performed on a budget of 125.
Okay.
It pulled in 546, which is 437%. I mean, it made more money, but as a percentage, down from 571 to 437. It took a dip, but still, widely popular.
Still very good.
Yeah. And then we wait 6 more years. We're 10 years from the original. We spent $150 million, and we're still going by the Roman numerals. J.J. Abrams comes back to direct Mission Impossible 3, MI3.
Yeah.
This dials it back a little bit in terms of the action sequences. We're introduced to Michelle Moynihan.
Mm-hmm.
And remember, Philip Seymour Hoffman was the bad guy.
I will still say one of the best bad guys we've ever seen in this franchise.
Absolutely. Exceptional.
When he was first cast, I was kind of like, what? This guy?
No. Exceptional. Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, he plays Owen Davian. We also had a lot of other people who are this is the first time Simon Pegg appeared as Benji.
Yeah.
Kerry Russell was in here. Maggie Q was in here. Lawrence Fishburne was in here. Billy Crudup was in here. I mean, this was a very
cast.
Yeah, very, very solid. So MI3, I remember it, but I don't remember anything specifically. I know that there was some type of dangerous weapon. The dangerous weapon was called Rabbit's Foot. And this was a big thing that they were trying to keep away from Philip Seymour Hoffman, who was a very charismatic, arrogant, and confident bad guy that even when he was caught, he was not worried at all about what was going to happen. So I thought MI3 was quite decent. It kind of dialed it back from the John Woo action sequences, but financially, it had a budget of 150. It pulled in only 398, which is 265% of the budget. Not really what you would expect from a third showing, right?
I also think that it's because it went back to its roots of being more of a spy and less action-oriented film. One of my favorites in this franchise, but I can understand why the mass market appeal wasn't there, because they did not hold your hand in this movie whatsoever. So you really had to be paying attention.
Yeah. But what we've seen with a lot of movies, you have a first movie and then you have a sequel, right? And the sequel does better because everyone's really excited by the original. That sequel's not very good. It has better numbers than the original, even though it's not very good because everyone's still excited by the original. Then the third one, even if it's better than the second one, goes down because everyone's prejudiced by the second one. They're like, hey, I saw the second one. It's not very good. I don't want to see the third one, even though the third one is better, right?
I don't want to say it's impossible, but I think it's generally speaking rare for the movies to continually escalate in terms of performance.
Yeah.
We've seen that, and don't hold me to this, I think that's what happened with Thor. I really believe Thor 1, 2, and 3 escalated. John Wick, all 4 movies have grossed more and more and more money.
Oh,
So it's not impossible, but I agree with you. It is very
Yeah.
rare. I think that
Yeah.
the third movie, generally speaking, has the most difficult time. The first movie has nothing to prove.
Yeah.
The second movie has popular vote, so they generally tend to go up in budget and there's a little bit of bloat.
Right. Right.
And then the third movie either has to continue that trend or has to win back the audience based on the critical reception of the second movie.
Am I remembering this right? Where MI3 is when Cruise and I think it's his wife, Michelle Monaghan, that they have to like use a defibrillator.
That, yes,
and like
to deactivate a bomb that the bad guy implants in their head. Because that's how the first agent dies in the first like opening sequence, right? Where they're escaping in like a helicopter through a wind farm or something like that.
Yeah.
What do you think is the signature stunt in this film?
I can't remember any.
Yeah.
Is there a signature stunt?
I honestly don't know. And to be fair, the first three movies weren't known for their signature stunts as much as the last three movies have.
That's right. Okay. So that's the first trilogy, 1996, 2000, 2006. We've got a hiatus of 5 years. We come back in 2011, and you hit it on the head. To me, this is where the current franchise really found its footing, right?
Yeah.
So Ghost Protocol had budget 145 million, took in, get this, 694. Wow. That's almost a 5x return. First time we've seen Jeremy Renner. Simon Pegg is back. Josh Holloway we see, right? Yep. What do you take away from Ghost Protocol, right? So we're not using Mission Impossible 4 anymore. It's Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol, and you just say Ghost Protocol, and that's what everyone thinks. This is where you start to see like the named stunts, right? Or the feature stunts and things like that.
This is the one where I think people, when they, normally the advertising budget or the advertising cycle is we make a movie. 6 months out, we launch a teaser. 3 months out, we launch the first trailer. 1 month out, we launch the second trailer, and then we release. Right. In this case, I think what they started doing was when they were still making the movie, they release a featurette where they're talking about the signature stunt. And of course, it's near and dear to your heart. What's the signature stunt of the Ghost Protocol?
Scaling Burj Khalifa.
Exactly. Right? Tom Cruise, a single rope or whatever you want
to call it. One glove. He only had like that one glove, remember?
And that one glove was swinging around the actual Burj Khalifa. Not CGI'd, not in some set, not with 1,000 stuntsmen. No, the actual Tom Cruise with one actual rope and one working glove on the actual Burj Khalifa, scaling it single-handedly.
And I think that's why we think of this movie as when it really found its footing, right?
Yeah.
They said, we've got to have one feature stunt, kind of like what they did in the first one with the rope and the hanging.
Yeah.
Although it wasn't like so daredevil. Like we've got to have one major stunt. And that's where Cruise really, I think, took off as kind of like an action star in another level.
I would agree with you. I would suggest that this is probably the movie which pivots Mission Impossible from being a spy or espionage thriller to an all-out action movie.
Yeah. And the same with Cruise. His reputation was an A-lister who was an actor in spy thrillers or even action movies. But I think he really took the reputation of kind of like this. Now he's kind of like this daredevil, right?
Yeah.
And I think it came because of Ghost Protocol and that scene where he's scaling Burj Khalifa, which I think was everything about that I thought was done terribly fantastic. Yeah. Maybe that's the wrong way to say it. Exceptionally fantastic.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I remember when this first came out, I think you and I had just about met, or maybe we had only known each other for like a couple of months at this point.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I remember because we were in Dubai, and of course, a majority of the action sequences take place in Dubai. And in fact, we were working in the same building right across the street. I remember we used to laugh about it only because anyone who's been to Dubai, anyone who lives in Dubai understands that, I mean, if you're in an airplane or a helicopter, those two buildings and those two locations look very close.
Right.
But like, even Usain Bolt would take 10 minutes to run from one building to the other, and he would I mean, he would be sweating bullets. Tom Cruise looked like he's...
Yeah, you're talking about like the sandstorm scene where he's like, goes from like Burj Khalifa to the souk, like
where,
the
yeah,
little
he's
market.
from Burj Khalifa to the IFC village, to the Gate Village, to the souk in 10-second
meters,
run.
a matter of meters. Yeah. This was a very solid Mission Impossible. Like they really, really put the train on the right track with this one, right? This is Brad Bird.
This is the movie where you're like, yeah, if you want to call John Woo in to come in, it makes sense.
Yeah.
This isn't the cerebral movies that the first one and third were anyway.
Yeah. This movie also had, and it does it so well, it also had kind of some funny scenes that aren't laugh out loud funny.
Yeah.
And I'll give you two examples. The first one is, remember that first scene where Tom Cruise is going into, like he's sneaking into the Kremlin, right?
Yeah.
And he's got like that movie screen. And like for a time you see like Benji's face on it.
Yeah.
Right? And Cruise is like, get down, that was a little bit funny. The idea of, when Jeremy Renner comes in, that's a little bit funny. The Burj Khalifa scene.
The glove.
And Benji's even like, hey, small change of plan. We're going to have to scale it from the outside. And Tom Cruise is like, right? That's a little bit funny. Same thing you said, with the glove, right? Remember the glove?
As it flutters down past him?
Yeah, it just kind of like flutters down. I thought Ghost Protocol was so good because it combined those elements of levity, which is so hard to do.
Yeah.
But it adds so much to a movie when you have those 3 or 4 kind of like funny things. They're not dark humor. They're not vulgar humor. They're timeless. Just the way that they incorporated that, I thought was exceptional and what made this movie so good, right?
I totally agree because they weren't actively trying to make you laugh out loud in the theater. They were like British style funny, which is a little bit deadpan. Yeah. And I have to imagine this is where Simon Pegg added a lot of value behind this.
What did you think of Jeremy Renner joining?
This was controversial because do you remember what they were trying to do with Jeremy Renner?
Yeah, there was kind of some thought that either Jeremy Renner was going to replace Cruise or there'd be kind of like a spin-off with his own thing.
Exactly. And it was around the same time, and I can't remember if this happened a couple years before or a couple years after, but they did the same thing to Matt Damon with the Jason Bourne franchise.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
And they introduced Jeremy Renner for precisely the same purpose.
Yeah.
So when he was introduced, don't get me wrong, like especially in the next movie, there's a little bit more value add.
Yeah.
But I felt like it was a little unfair to Tom Cruise at the time because this was the movie where he also found his own footing for this style of Mission Impossible.
Yeah.
And to then market this as him potentially coming in either to replace or to spin off, I thought was done a little too early.
I agree. But if you look at the numbers, MI3 was kind of down, right? I mean, they've got 1, 2 is down, 3 is down. Like, look, if we're coming back after 5 years, it makes a little bit of sense that let's light a fire under Cruise and let's add another person to the cover of this, to the gang. We need something else. And it worked, right? It was at 145 million, which is shocking. 5 million less than 5 years earlier. Generated, again, 694. That's almost 5x. So 3 or 4, Ghost Protocol, extraordinarily successful. And then now that it's found its footing, then in 2015, another 150 million. They're really sticking tight on the budget here. I've got to admire that. Rogue Nation.
We'll talk about that, but yeah.
Yeah. Rogue Nation, which is a lot of the same folks, right? We've got Renner again. You've got Simon Pegg again, who's got a bigger role. This is the first time we see Rebecca Ferguson, who you and I love in Silo.
Absolutely.
Right? Ving Rhames being the standover. You see Alec Baldwin coming in, as part of the CIA. So that's it. And when you think of Rogue Nation, what's the stunt? What's the big thing you think of? The plane taking off.
Oh, duh. That's the problem. I confused that with the last movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Where he's literally hanging on by his fingertips to the side of like some cargo transport plane as it's taking off.
That's Rogue Nation. This is the first time we get introduced to the Syndicate, right? Which is, as you like to say, it's kind of this global, borderless cabal of bad guys who want to take over the world, new world order. Not entirely true, but this is the first time we get the Syndicate.
Before we talk more about the film, what is your opinion on the Syndicate? What is your feeling about this cabal that's been persisting over the last few movies?
I have to say, I get it very much confused with the group that's in James Bond. They're kind of the same thing, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I have to say, it makes a little bit more sense than every film has its own Philip Seymour Hoffman or its own bad guy with a nuclear code or with a virus or with, it makes a little bit more sense that it's kind of more conspiracy-like. So I think it makes sense. I don't really fear them. I don't think they really have a great identity, but I think they work very good, as you'd probably say, as like a MacGuffin for the plot revolving around them.
What you're saying is absolutely right, but I'm not a fan, to be honest. I'm not a fan because I think there's, or at least up until the last movie or until this movie, have still been a little too nebulous, one.
Yeah.
And two, I like the idea that every movie should have a new bad guy and be a little bit more episodic. And I get that every movie has a bad guy, but what they've effectively got is that these bad guys are working for the cabal.
Yeah.
Maybe that would have worked for 1 and 2 movies, right? So like maybe if they had only introduced them in Dead Reckoning Part 1 and then they finish it off in Part 2, that would have been fine. It seems very video gamey, which is to say there's this ultra boss and every other bad guy is like a mini boss, right? And all the bad guys feel like mini bosses that way. So I wasn't a huge fan. I'm not like, and I had the same problem, by the way, with the James Bond franchise.
Skyfall.
I don't know. It just seems like unfinished business for the sake of the business being unfinished, just so that they can make more movies.
But how did you like this last James Bond where it's Rami Malek? Then you've got a single bad guy. How do you like that though? Because that guy has to carry the movie, right?
I think he did it. I really liked him as a bad guy. I thought he was a fabulous bad guy. I mean, the movie wasn't my favorite. I think it's also because the
kid
idea of killing off James Bond, spoiler alert, is kind of silly. But anyway, look, that's neither here nor there. I think that's probably just a personal preference. My point is that when push comes to shove, give me a good bad guy in every movie who's a good foil for Ethan Hunt. Henry Cavill, great bad guy. We'll talk about him.
Let's get there then. So now we're going to 2018 Mission Impossible 6, which is just called Fallout. Bigger budget, 178 million, pulled in a staggering 791, 4.4x of its budget. That's pretty good, kind of on par with the prior ones. So we're staying about stable. And this is the one that you think about two things. You think about Henry Cavill, his fight scene in the bathroom, and you think about that.
Where he cocks his arms. Shivers. Still to date. Shivers.
And that Halo jump was a big stunt, although I think as far as stunts go, that one just felt a little bit less impressive, even though in real life that is impressive, but I think it didn't feel that way. They brought Cable in, and I thought that really spiced it up. I thought that was a very, very good tandem. Ving Rhames again, Rebecca Ferguson again, Simon Pegg as Benji again. Michelle Moynihan makes a very, very small cameo. Angela Bassett is in there working for the CIA. Alec Baldwin, CIA. And Vanessa Kirby, the first time we see her, I think. What did you think? I mean, this is really the one that's going to decide if people are going to go to cinemas, right? This is 2018 Fallout. It kind of ended with that dramatic helicopter thing in the air.
Oh, right? Yeah, I forgot about that. And then they have the fight on the cliffside.
What do you think? Is this a good ending place? And is it going to be the springboard for Dead Reckoning?
I have no idea what Dead Reckoning is about. Like, I've been relatively careful about not watching trailers. I think I've seen one teaser, But in terms of what the overarching plot is, I'm not 100% sure what's going on. So in terms of, is Fallout a good jumping off point? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. But let's talk about the elephant
Can I
in the
say one more
room.
thing? 2 and 3 were both released in May. 4, 5, 6, all July summer blockbusters.
Also, 4, 5, and 6 are when it transitioned from being, let's say, an intellectual action movie to a pure knock'em, sock'em, robots action blockbuster.
That's right.
We've been, and thanks to you for your research, impeccable as always. Let's talk about the budget for a second.
Whoa.
How much was the last movie, Fallout?
Fallout, they say, was 178. Let's round it up to 180. This one is 290, I've read.
$290 million. Now,
what?
Let's caveat two things. One, remember they filmed the 2 movies back to back. So how much of 290 million is allocated to the second movie? We don't know. There's probably some cross-play in here, but not all of it, because I don't think they can make 2 feature-length movies for $300 million, given the last movie cost 180. That's my gut instinct. I imagine the production budget is front-loaded for the first movie because that'll probably include the cost for a lot of the locations.
Okay.
The second point is that this is also a movie that was being filmed mid-pandemic. Yeah. So there's definitely going to be some COVID bloat in there. Yeah. Now, how much is that COVID bloat? Is that $20 million? Is it $100 million? I don't know. Right. But in any case, this is a cause for concern. If this movie is projected at costing, let's say, for the sake of argument, $300 million, that makes it one of the top 20 most expensive movies of all time. That also means that this movie needs to make like $700 million to have a shot at breaking even. And that's just to break even. And historically, the last 3 movies have probably been averaging at just around that $700 million mark, plus minus.
694, 682, 791. I think it's fair to see this one tickle $1 billion. I can see us at 950. I can even see us at exactly 1 billion. I don't see this at 1.1, even at like 900 million. Again, you're looking at 3x return, which is a good return. But compared to everything else being 5.7, 4.7, 4.8, 4.5, 4.4, if you're only getting 3x return, you're making 900 million, but only 3 times your budget. That's not what you should be aiming for. You should be aiming for at least 4x, which puts you at 1.2 almost.
Yeah, I also would caution you to say that none of the movies this year, with the exception of maybe Guardians in terms of summer blockbusters, have performed at the rate we thought they would.
Oh, we need a separate discussion about this, but Guardians has performed much better than I thought. Fast X is way down. Little Mermaid's way up, but what does it matter? Transformers, even below what I expected. The Flash, don't even talk about it, right? Indiana, it's been a bleak summer, huh?
The summer has been, forget about our top 10 list for a minute. Yeah. But man, this summer has to have been one of the worst in terms of at least managing expectations, because I thought this was the summer where everyone was going to be like, pandemic, schmandemic. We're back and we're kicking ass left, right, and center. And I thought they were primed for it, right? We saw
good lineup, by the way. It's a good lineup.
In terms of names, fantastic lineup. And then also in terms of the buildup, we had Avatar cross $1 billion earlier in the year.
Yeah.
We had Super Mario cross $1 billion in spring. So it was just like, oh, this is going to be totally a kick-ass summer.
Some big surprises.
It's been actually shockingly bad when there is a 500 million gulf between the top performing movie of the year versus the top performing movie of the summer. $500 million.
Yeah, it's really shocking that Mario pulled in $1 billion
1.35.
and neither Guardians, Fast X, or The Flash even came close to that. I know Transformers is not going to. I left them off. And I know Indiana Jones is not going to. I let them off. But Mission Impossible is in a position where it could absolutely, absolutely overtake Guardians of the Galaxy and be the number one grossing movie of the summer. Huh?
It absolutely could be right now, based on the pure underperformance. I expect that it should be, but based on the fact that so many movies have panned, this is now an industry problem. You can blame one or two movies for underperforming for whatever reason, but not 9, not 10 movies. I think this has the potential to be the number one. I agree with your assessment from 3 months ago that this is going to be the number one movie. I would only caution that based on how badly the other movies have performed, it would not be in the realm of impossibility for that to also happen to this movie.
Can I just point out one thing that's undermining my guesstimate?
Yeah.
Maybe there's someone else who appears in here that's not listed on IMDb. But when I look at IMDb, apart from Tom Cruise, where is my Jeremy Renner? Where is my second person that's really carrying this, right? Rebecca Ferguson, lovely. I'm addicted to her in Silo. Not really bringing people to the cinema. Haley Atwell, I have a crush on her. Not bringing people to the cinema. Vanessa Kirby, same. Simon Pegg, definitely not. Carrie Ells, no. Rob Delaney, no. Ving Rhames, no. Where is the cameo by a Hollywood royalty who's here, who's like drawing people in? If you're looking for a fault in this movie, there's not a clear number two, right?
My only counter to that is that this probably won't need a number two, because I think the number two is going to be the action sequences. I think Tom Cruise pulls them in and the action sequences sustains.
Like Henry Cavill was in Fallout. He didn't eat into Cruise, but he was a very good big second name for that, right?
Yeah.
Jeremy Renner was in the prior two. It would have been a good idea, I think, if they would have brought in that one other person, even if it's for a very, very middling cameo as another agent who gets shot or who does something, a helicopter pilot. That would have been, I think, if this does not go well, I think they would look back and say, yeah, we probably should have brought in someone else again, right?
This is the realm of speculation. I'm confident that they won't need a second lead, as it were. But, you could very well be right. If this movie underperforms, that could be a defining factor. In any case, let's talk quickly. How excited are you for this film?
I have to say, I'm very excited. Not so excited that, I'm counting. Well, let me put it another way. I'm absolutely going to go within the first 2 to 3 days that it opens. And in Dubai, it's a little bit unique. It's opening here on Sunday the 9th. That is the global premiere, Sunday the 9th, which is a good 4 days before it's opening anywhere else in the world.
Fantastic.
So I'm not sure if I'm going to go Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, but maximum Wednesday, I guess that's the 12th or the 13th. I will definitely be going. I'm very excited to see the movie, but I'm not booking my ticket in advance and going to go to the first showing. I'm happy to wait a few days until the work week is kind of more or less over, but definitely I'm very excited. I expect that the action is going to be great. I think the story is going to be great. I think the defining point for me, whether this is a absolutely must see or a wait for streaming, is if they're able to incorporate those moments of levity, those comedic elements. If there's anyone who's going to have a very good banter with Tom Cruise, whether it's Benji or Simon Pegg, Rebecca Ferguson, whoever that is, Haley Atwell, if someone's able to pull that off, I think it's going to be a massive summer blockbuster. Yeah. If it's just kind of going through the motions of Cruise doing a bunch of running in the street, some very impressive car chases, couple helicopters falling out of the sky and so forth, I'll say great, very faithful edition of Mission Impossible. not necessarily something that you absolutely have to see before there's any spoilers. I also have to say, the fact that it's part one of part two, does that help it or not help it? What do you think?
That's so hilarious, because that's literally the next question I had keyed up for you.
Yeah.
This is the third movie this summer that is effectively a twofer. We have Fast X, which ended on a semi-cliffhanger. You had Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, which ended on a wait till see what happens next.
Right.
And now we've got this movie. I wouldn't expect it for any summer blockbuster. You kind of want to see a conclusion. You don't want to walk out of a cinema and be like, I wonder how it's going to end for a summer blockbuster. I think my preference would have almost been, hey, we filmed these things back to back. Let's release Dead Man's Reckoning in like November or December. And then part two, 2024 summer prime time. You get the bang and the explosion of the actual conclusion. You get a sense of closure. That was one of the biggest gripes I had with Fast X, was like, despite how highly we rated it, it was disappointing that they ended it on a flimsy cliffhanger. It was disappointing that they haven't even started filming Fast 11. The
disappointingness of how Fast 10 went, I think, is going to have a really detrimental impact on Fast 11. If you're really going to do this in two parts, you've got to have something insane happen at the end of part one, like really insane. You've got to have a major reveal, a gasp. You've got to show someone that you thought was dead or not dead. You've got to have a kidnapping. You've got to have a turncoat. You've got to have something crazy. Okay. I still see very, very big things for Mission Impossible. I think it's going to be great. The trailer looks fantastic, I have to say. I think it's going to end up being the number one summer blockbuster. I hope it's timeless. We'll see.
I would like this movie to be number one, even though that hurts my rankings. I would still like this to be a success.
Oh, I appreciate that.
I'm going to go in with eyes open, arms open, heart open, whatever you want to call it, in the sense that, look, let's get a truly awesome summer blockbuster the same way we felt about Maverick last year.
Yeah.
I still haven't felt that this year.
I have to say, the trailer for Mission Impossible, it looks really, really good.
We're so close to it now, I'm not going to bother. So I'll save myself.
At least we know the background. We know where 1 through 6 is. Let's have a review next weekend after we both see it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Pete, where can people put their predictions, prognostications, educated guesses, comments, feedback, assumptions, hopes, and dreams?
Well, the first and best place would be your dream journal. But the second best place, tweet at us at F&S Podcast. You can DM us on Instagram at Films and Stuff Podcast. You can email us aloha@filmsandstuffpodcast.com, or you can leave a comment. You can like this video. You can subscribe to our channel. Any of those things will ensure that we get in touch with you immediately after you tell us what you think is going to happen in the next movie or what you think of the last 6.
That's right. We'll be here, and you can catch us next week where we break it down, and let's see if we're all right, wrong, whether it met, exceeded, or did not meet our expectations.
Indeed. But until then, thank you very much, Ethan.
I am Ethan. You are Pete. We are Films and Stuff. We appreciate you all listening, and we'll catch you next week for a breakdown of Mission Impossible. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Films and Stuff. If you haven't already, please subscribe and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever podcasts are downloaded. Films and Stuff. There is no substitute.